Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel for a brand new mystery with Molly. If you are new around here, if you've never seen my face on your screen before, then hi, my name is Molly and I post true crime videos like this every single week. So if you think that that is something that you might want to stick around for, then please do subscribe and don't forget to switch on the little notification bell so that YouTube will let you know whenever I post a new video. This week we are going to be talking about the solved case of Molly Mclaren. She was a young woman from the southeast of England and she was tragically murdered in mid-2017. Molly's case is such a heartbreaking one as she had been the target of harassment and stalking at the hands of her killer prior to her death, all because he couldn't take no for an answer. He couldn't handle her rejection of him, and this twisted individual ultimately decided that if he couldn't have Molly, then no one could, and he was going to make sure of that. But quickly before we get into the case, please listen carefully to the following. This video is about the murder of a young woman and it involves heavy themes such as violence towards women, domestic abuse, mental and emotional abuse, stalking and harassment, as well as mental health issues such as anxiety, bulimia and eating disorders, and also bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder too. There are some helplines linked down below in the description box for anyone who may be facing these issues, and viewer discretion is advised. So for this week's case, we are going back to the summer of 2017 in Chatham, which is a town located in the county of Kent in the southeast of England. And this is Molly Mclaren. She was a 23-year-old woman who lived in Kent with her family. Specifically, Molly was from a village in Kent called Cobham. Molly was born on the 26th of May 1994 to her parents Doug and Joanne Mclaren, and she was one of two children. She had an older brother named Tom. By all accounts, Molly had a very normal, happy childhood. She was close to her family. She always had a lot of friends in school, and one of her best friends, Chloe, described Molly as being the kind of person that everyone just kind of gravitated towards because she had such a big personality. She was said to be the life and soul of the party. She was very funny and very sociable, and her mum Joanne described her as being just a ray of sunshine. Molly was such a kind and reliable person who always looked out for everyone and who was always able to cheer others up. Her father Doug said that Molly was the type to just light up any room that she walked into, and throughout her late teenage years and into early adulthood, Molly enjoyed doing much of the same things that other people her age enjoyed doing. She loved spending time with her family and her friends and going shopping. She loved going out on nights out with her friends and dressing up. She adored music festivals. Her mum said that Molly would literally go to as many festivals as she could. She just loved having fun. She enjoyed having a drink, having a dance, and just letting her hair down. However, life wasn't always so fun for Molly because for a while she struggled a lot with her mental health. She suffered from anxiety and she would often experience panic attacks, and as well as that she also suffered with an eating disorder too. She suffered with bulimia, and I'm not entirely sure when exactly her battle with bulimia began, but for quite a long time she sadly suffered in silence. For many months she kept it to herself and she would try her best to hide it from her loved ones, but eventually Molly found the courage to be able to open up and tell her family what was going on. And following this, eventually Molly started to really confront her bulimia and fight against it. She was so unbelievably strong and she managed to recover and heal her relationship with food. And in her recovery, she decided that she wanted to help and provide support to other people who may have been going through similar things. So she began opening up about her struggles on social media too. She had a blog where she would talk about her mental health issues, which I can imagine must have been so helpful to others who were struggling with their mental health, just for them to know that they weren't alone, that there were other people like Molly who had gone through a similar thing and who had overcome it. Molly was proof to others who were struggling that there is light at the end of the tunnel and that you are stronger than your mental illness. And actually, I think what she went through with her bulimia ultimately did play a part in what she eventually decided she wanted to do as a career. She decided that she wanted to be a fitness instructor, a personal trainer, Mollie was very, very passionate about fitness and exercise. She loved exercise so much. She would always post videos of her running and of her workouts and videos of her at the gym on her social media. And by the time this case took place, she was a university student. She attended the University of Kent and she studied, I believe, nutrition and sport and exercise, which at first Mollie's family were a bit apprehensive about. They had their concerns that, you know, her studying nutrition might lead to her bulimia resurfacing again and taking over. However, thankfully, her mum Joanne said that actually it did the exact opposite. If anything, her studies made Mollie stronger in her battle against bulimia because it was just making her even more passionate about health and fitness as her knowledge about the subject expanded. As well as her studies, Mollie also had a part-time job in retail. She worked as a sales assistant in a Ted Baker shop, and Mollie also inserted herself into the dating scene, and as many other young people do nowadays, she began using dating apps to try and find that special someone. She had decided that she wanted to find a relationship. She downloaded the Tinder app. She set up a profile, started chatting with some guys on there, and she began going on a couple of dates, which, you know, she enjoyed. She enjoyed going on these dates, although nothing really ended up happening with any of these guys. I guess she just didn't feel a connection with any of them, so she never really took it any further. Or at least that was until July of 2016, when Mollie matched with a new guy on Tinder, a guy named Joshua Stimpson. Josh was a couple of years older than Mollie. He was around 25 years old when they met, and she would have been 22, I think. And they obviously found each other very attractive on Tinder, and so they both swiped right and they started messaging one another, and they continued messaging one another for a good few months before they actually decided to meet in person. So they started chatting in July of 2016, like I said, and it wasn't until 4 months later in November when they actually went on their first date. But as soon as they met, they hit it off straight away. They really enjoyed each other's company. They seemed to be very similar in their interests. I think Josh was also very much into fitness as well. And apparently one thing in particular that they seemed to really bond over was their struggles with mental illness. As we know, Mollie had suffered from anxiety and bulimia, and Josh said that he had bipolar disorder. So they would talk about that, talk about their mental health, and they found support in each other. And they just seemed to be besotted with each other. They continued going on dates and their connection just developed, and eventually they made it official. They were officially boyfriend and girlfriend. And in December of 2016, Mollie's family met Joshua Stimpson for the first time, and their first impression of him was just that he seemed like a nice, normal guy. He seemed polite. He would chat with Mollie's parents. He spoke to her dad Doug a lot about football and things like that. They liked him. He became quite close to her family, actually. He would often spend time around their house, and he seemed to make Mollie really, really happy, and so her parents were happy for her. Although this happiness and this honeymoon period at the start of their relationship didn't last, because eventually cracks in Joshua Stimpson's personality started to appear. A couple of red flags began to emerge, which Mollie and her family started to pick up on. So for example, they noticed that Josh never wanted to introduce Mollie to any of his friends, which was a complete contrast to how she was with him. She loved getting him to meet her friends because she was so happy with him. Like I said, she was besotted, so she wanted to, I guess, show him off in a way. Whereas Josh was the opposite. He wouldn't let Mollie meet any of his friends. He used to play football on the weekends and he wouldn't let her go to any of his games because he didn't want her meeting and interacting with his teammates. And it turns out that the reason for this was because he didn't actually want any other guy looking at Mollie or talking to Mollie because that made him jealous. It was like in his eyes, Mollie was his to look at. But also, as well as that, once he started dating Mollie, from what I can gather, he kind of just stopped hanging out with a lot of his friends. He became a bit of a loner because all he wanted to do was be with Mollie all the time, which again was a contrast to Mollie because she would spend a lot of time with Josh, obviously, but she would still enjoy hanging out with her friends too. She liked having that balance, I suppose, but he didn't. He just wanted to be with Molly all the time, which of course became a problem because it became obsessive. Josh would constantly turn up at Molly's house without asking beforehand, and he would just pester her when she was busy doing other things. So for example, obviously she was a uni student, so she often had a lot of uni work to do, and when she was at home studying, Josh would just turn up unannounced and he would sit on her bed and just watch her study, and then he would moan that she was barely talking to him or spending time with him because she was busy studying. He would have a go at her because he didn't like the fact that he wasn't Molly's sole focus. In addition to that, Joshua Stimpson even quit his job without discussing it with Molly first. He just quit his job out of the blue, and he did this because, again, he just wanted to be with Molly all the time. He didn't want to go to work because that meant that he couldn't be with Molly during his working hours. He couldn't check up on her, check what she was doing. He became so incredibly possessive and controlling of Molly, which, as you can imagine, was so emotionally draining for her. In the beginning of their relationship, she was so smitten with Josh, thinking that he was the one. But now it was like he was suffocating her. He wouldn't let her have any independence. And so in February of 2017, she decided to break up with Josh. But he did not take this breakup well. He refused to accept Molly's decision and just let her get on with her life. And so he basically started harassing her. He would send her countless messages just begging her to get back together with him, and the messages did not stop. He just kept going and going and going until eventually he got what he wanted. Molly agreed to give him another chance, but not because she actually wanted to be with him. She was literally giving him another chance because she was sick of him harassing her. She felt like she didn't have a choice because he wouldn't leave her alone. So she reluctantly gave the relationship another go, but of course things between them did not get better. If anything, they got worse. Josh started trying to manipulate Molly and make out like he wasn't the one causing the problems in the relationship, she was. He would tell her that her anxiety and her mental health was the problem and that she was just convincing herself that Josh was the bad guy when he wasn't. He was just so calculating and manipulative, as I said. And then in May of 2017, Joshua Stimpson accompanied Molly and her family to another family member's 60th birthday party in Essex, and they were staying overnight in a hotel. And at this party, Molly's family noticed that Josh just seemed to be in a mood pretty much the whole evening. Whilst Molly was having fun with her family and having a dance, he was just like sulking, like he was annoyed at her for having a good time. And then later that night, Molly actually called her mum, Joanne, to her and Josh's hotel room because Josh kept recording videos of Molly on his phone whilst he was also trying to wind her up. It's believed that he was purposefully trying to aggravate her so that she would say something that she might later regret, and then he would have that to keep on his phone as something that he could possibly later use to threaten her with, if that makes sense. Molly and Josh went on holiday together towards the end of May 2017. I think they'd had this holiday booked for a while, and despite the fact that their relationship was on the rocks, Molly decided that she was still going to go on this holiday with Josh to see if he would be any different when they were away, and just to kind of come to a final decision in her head as to whether or not she was going to stay with him. And ultimately, when they returned from this holiday, she made up her mind that she wasn't. It just was not working, so she was adamant that this was it. She was splitting up with him again, and this time it was for good. She broke things off with Josh on the 17th of June 2017 during a night out. She just decided that enough was enough, and as expected, just like the first time around, Stimpson did not take this well. He proceeded to once again harass Molly. He would send her text message after text message pleading with her to take him back. However, Molly refused. She was not giving him another chance. She was done, which absolutely enraged Joshua Stimpson. He was furious with Molly for breaking up with him, furious that now he had no control because she had taken it back. back, and this anger that he felt towards Molly led to him beginning to post some horrible things about her on social media, specifically on Facebook. He started posting on Facebook that Molly was addicted to drugs and that she used cocaine and that she was hiding this from her family, which from what I can gather was just complete lies. And he would tag Molly's mum Joanne in these posts on Facebook so that she could see them. He was just doing and saying anything that he could to basically destroy her reputation, all because he couldn't handle rejection, because he couldn't handle the fact that she didn't want to be with him. He was just completely relentless. Even when Molly blocked him on Facebook, he would not stop. And so Molly tried to reach out to the team at Facebook asking if they could remove the post that Josh had made about her, and they did remove them. However, of course, he just continued to write more. And so she reached out to Facebook again, this time asking if they could block him. I think if they could just remove his profile, because he was not stopping writing these horrible posts. And apparently they said that they couldn't. They weren't going to block his profile. And so following this, Molly decided to just go to the police. She printed off copies of all of the things that Josh had written about her, and she took it to the Kent police. This was on the 22nd of June 2017. After taking this report from Molly, the police contacted Josh and they told him to stop writing the posts about Molly, basically giving him a warning, otherwise he was going to be arrested. However, it was clear that this just didn't faze Stimpson at all. He wasn't remorseful, he didn't apologise, he was in denial, claiming that he hadn't done anything wrong. And towards the end of this conversation with the police officer, Joshua Stimpson said something to the effect of, "You've seen nothing yet, there's more to come." As well as Facebook, Molly of course blocked Josh on all of her other social media profiles, as did the rest of her family and her friends. And more than anything, she just wanted to get on with her life, move on. But unbeknownst to her, her ex, Joshua Stimpson, was still constantly checking up on her, stalking her. He was still checking her social media profiles to see what she was doing. He just wasn't doing it through his own profile. It turns out that Stimpson had essentially recruited someone else to stalk Molly through social media. He got this other girl who he had become friends with through Tinder, actually. They matched on Tinder before, and that's how they started chatting, and eventually they became good friends, despite the fact that they never actually met in person, I don't believe. But he would get this girl to constantly check Molly's social media profiles for him so that he could still keep tabs on her. And of course, Molly had absolutely no idea. He found out through all of this secret stalking that Molly had applied for a job at a local gym, and upon finding this out, he decided to join this gym just in case she got this job so that he could watch her while she was at work. And later the same day that he applied to this gym, on the 27th of June 2017, Stimpson went to an Asda supermarket where he purchased a kitchen knife. The police later found CCTV of him in the store buying the knife, and apparently he also purchased a pickaxe from a home-based store less than half an hour after this. The day following this, on the evening of the 28th of June, Molly went out with some friends. They went out for dinner at a pub called the Ship and Trades in Chatham, and she posted about where they were going on her social media, of course not thinking anything of it, not thinking that Josh would be able to see it because she had him blocked on everything. So you can imagine her shock when he turned up at the pub while she was there, and sources state that he just spent the whole night basically staring at Molly. So understandably, she felt so uneasy and uncomfortable and confused. She couldn't understand how he knew that she was there. She thought that it may have just been a coincidence that they just happened to go to the same pub that night, but I think deep down she had a gut feeling that it wasn't coincidence. She knew that somehow he had managed to track her, somehow he'd managed to view her social media profiles. So she left the pub early and she just decided to go back home, back to the safety of her home. Little did she know at the time that Joshua Stimpson's reign of terror was far from over. In fact, he was about to take his twisted behaviour to a whole new, incredibly violent level. Just the morning after the incident at the Ship and Trades pub, so on the morning of the 29th of June 2017, 23-year-old Molly Mclaren woke up early. She had some breakfast and then she told her mum Joanne that she was headed off to the gym, something that she obviously did most days, and she planned to video herself working out at the gym to share on her fitness Instagram and also for her uni work. So she got ready, said goodbye to her mum, told her mum that she loved her and her mum said it back, and then she walked out of the door, got in her car and started driving. She arrived at the gym just after 10 a.m. Her gym was a Pure Gym located within the Dockside retail outlet in Chatham, and once she arrived she obviously went inside and she began her workout. However, shortly after arriving and after starting her workout, Molly noticed that her ex-boyfriend, her stalker essentially, was at the gym too. Joshua Stimpson arrived just minutes after her, so clearly he had somehow followed her there, and as soon as he went in he literally started working out right next to Molly, and there is CCTV footage of this, so I will have that on screen for you to see. The gym was pretty empty as well. It wasn't like it was jam-packed and so he had to work out next to Molly. He chose to work out right next to her, probably just to intimidate her, to make her feel uncomfortable. And of course he succeeded. As soon as she saw him she felt uneasy and she actually started messaging her friends and her mum saying, Josh has literally just turned up at the gym and come right next to me. And I think Molly realised at this point that Josh was definitely stalking her. As I said a few minutes ago, when he turned up at the pub that she was at the evening before, there was a part of her that thought, okay, maybe it's just a coincidence, but now that he had turned up at the gym just the next day and he started working out right next to her, that just confirmed in her head that no, this was no coincidence, and she hadn't posted anything on social media about where she was going that morning, so he was following her. This was stalking and harassment, and so she decided to confront him. Molly walked up to Josh in the gym and she asked if he was following her. She asked why he wasn't at work that morning. By this point, as I understand it, he had gotten a new job, and it's believed that he just replied something along the lines of, it's none of your business. And so Molly walked away. She continued texting her mum and her friends, and one message that she sent to her friends said, quote, I feel like I'm looking over my shoulder all the time. Her mum Joanne told Molly to just come home. She said, don't speak to him, don't acknowledge him, ignore him and just come home. Although I think soon after this, Josh actually left the gym himself, so Molly held back for a few minutes. She waited until she assumed he would have driven off before walking out of the gym and back to her car. However, unbeknownst to her, he hadn't driven off. After walking out of the gym, Joshua Stimpson got in his car and he started just driving slowly around the car park like he was looking out for Molly. He was waiting until she left the gym, and when she did, he watched her walk out of the gym just after 11 a.m. that morning. She walked to her vehicle, opened the door and got inside. She was just about to start her car and drive back to her house. However, Molly never arrived home that day. In fact, she never even made it out of that car park, because as soon as she got into her car, she was confronted by Joshua Stimpson. He yanked Molly's car door open, pulled out a knife, the knife that he had purchased from the Asda supermarket just 2 days before, and he immediately started just stabbing Molly repeatedly with it. He was just stabbing her over and over and over again. This was such a vicious and frenzied attack. So of course Molly was shouting and screaming. She kept trying to beep her horn to get the attention of other people in the car park so that hopefully they could help her. And one passerby tried to help her. He obviously saw what was happening and so he tried to intervene. He tried to grab Josh's leg at one point to pull him away from Molly. However, Josh had so much of Molly's blood all over him, so much blood spatter, and so this witness couldn't get a good grip on Josh's leg to be able to pull him because the blood was obviously slippery. The witness also tried to slam slammed the car door on Josh's leg to get him to stop, but nothing was working. Josh was just in this state of utter rage. Nothing was going to stop him from attacking Molly, and he just continued stabbing her over and over. In total, Molly sustained more than 75 stab wounds to her body. I believe mainly to her head and her neck area. Her throat was just completely cut. Josh was determined that she was not going to leave that car park alive. It wasn't long before the police were at the scene. Of course, as soon as passers-by realised what was happening, the emergency services were called, and Joshua Stimpson didn't even try to make a run for it. As soon as he saw the police, he walked right up to them, again absolutely covered in Molly's blood, and he basically said to them words to the effect of, "You're here for me, I'm the one you want." He just gave himself up, which just shows that he did not give a crap about what the consequences were to his actions. He wasn't scared of being arrested and going to prison. To him, that was worth it so long as Molly was dead. All because she just did not want to be with him, and he succeeded in his mission. When emergency services arrived at the scene, they tried desperately hard to save Molly, but her injuries were just way too severe, and so she was pronounced dead at the scene. Meanwhile, obviously, her mum Joanne was waiting for her to arrive home. The last time she spoke to her daughter, she said that she was going to leave the gym and come home, and the drive back to their house was usually no more than 20 minutes long. However, half an hour passed by and there was no sign of Molly, and so Joanne began texting her asking where she was, but she never got a reply. And then not long after this, Joanne received a text message from one of Molly's friends, one of the friends that Molly had messaged while she was at the gym, saying that Josh had just turned up. This friend texted Joanne asking if she had heard from Molly, was Molly home yet, and Joanne said no. And then this friend said that she had just heard reports that there was apparently an incident, something going on at the Chatham Dockside Retail Park where Molly's gym was. Apparently, someone had been attacked there, and as soon as Joanne heard this, she just had this instant gut feeling that it was her daughter. Molly was the one who had been attacked, and of course she was right, and soon after the police turned up to speak to Joanne and confirm that the victim was her daughter. And Molly's father, Doug, was actually away for work at the time. He was on a drill ship in Senegal, and so Joanne had to send an email to her husband just saying, "Call me as soon as you see this." And so of course Doug did, and Joanne broke the news to him. She had to tell her husband over the phone, whilst he was thousands of miles away, that his daughter was dead, that she had been murdered. Of course, Joshua Stimpson was quickly arrested at the scene soon after the police arrived, and he was taken to the police station to be interviewed. However, he wouldn't really say anything. Every single question the detectives asked him, he just responded with no comment. He was not willing to cooperate or give any kind of explanation. But I mean, regardless, he was still charged because the police had so much evidence against him. He literally committed this murder in broad daylight in a public place. So they had countless witnesses, forensic evidence, they recovered the murder weapon, they had CCTV, so they had a strong case, and Stimpson was charged with murder. However, despite all of this evidence, when it came to his plea hearing, he actually decided to plead not guilty to murder. He pled not guilty on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Josh claimed that he had no memories of the attack, and his defense team claimed that he couldn't be held responsible for his actions due to his mental state at the time of Molly's death. They claimed that due to his bipolar and I think borderline personality disorder, he couldn't control himself and he couldn't help the fact that he just flew into this blind rage. And so the defense said that the jury should find him guilty of manslaughter rather than murder. And so the prosecution had, I believe, 2 different psychiatrists examine Joshua Stimpson in order to establish if this really was the case. And these psychiatrists concluded that actually it wasn't. Their opinion was that he did didn't have bipolar disorder, and nor did he have a personality disorder. And I'm not entirely sure whether this was something that Joshua had just lied to Molly about, or whether he had been, I guess, misdiagnosed in the past by another health professional. But regardless, these psychiatrists who examined him following Molly's death felt confident that he did not suffer from bipolar or a personality disorder. So that's his defense argument out the window, isn't it? But in addition to that, I mean, all of the evidence just refutes these claims too. The defense was saying that Joshua Stimpson just suddenly flew into this blind rage when he attacked Molly, and that he couldn't help it. It was impulsive. It was a spur of the moment crime. But that's not what the evidence indicates. The evidence proves that this crime was premeditated. How can he say that he didn't plan to kill Molly when they had CCTV footage of him buying the murder weapon 2 days before the attack, when they had CCTV footage of him driving slowly around the car park just before the attack, waiting for Molly to walk out of the gym, when they had proof that he had been stalking her through his friend's social media profile? In fact, speaking of this friend who, as we know, helped Josh to check up on Molly's social media prior to her murder, she was brought in as a witness during the trial, and she was apparently just quite cold and blasé when she was giving evidence. According to a documentary that I watched about this case, she just said during the trial that it's what most people in the younger generation do now. Most people check up on their exes through social media, and she insinuated that she was basically like an expert in it. She was an expert in social media stalking, and that's why she agreed to help Josh. She almost seemed proud of it in a way, which I just think is so insensitive. I mean, I get that she couldn't have predicted what Josh was going to do to Molly. She couldn't have known that all of this stalking through social media would eventually lead to him murdering her. But the fact that she was so blasé about it during the trial just does not sit right with me at all. You'd think that she would feel a level of guilt about the fact that she essentially aided Joshua Stimpson's stalking. Without her, he wouldn't have known where Molly was and what she was doing half the time. But yeah, anyway, so all of this evidence just proved that this crime was premeditated. But the evidence didn't stop there. In addition to all of that, the prosecution also put forward evidence to show that Joshua Stimpson actually had a history of abuse and harassment towards women before he even met Molly. Two ex-girlfriends of Stimpson's were brought in as witnesses during the trial, and they explained to the jury that when they both ended their relationships with Josh, he became abusive to them. He would harass them and follow them and stalk them because he was furious that they didn't want to be with him. He even slashed the tyres on one of their cars, and he did the same thing to one of these exes that he did to Molly. After she broke up with him, he started posting horrible, nasty things about her on Facebook. He would send her threatening messages, even threatening to kill her at one point in a message. And I believe one of these ex-girlfriends did go to the police about Josh's behaviour. However, he was never charged with a crime. He was just given a warning. So technically, he didn't have a criminal record before killing Molly. Joshua Stimpson's trial lasted for about 2 weeks, and on the 6th of February 2018, the jury was sent off to deliberate, and they deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with a verdict of guilty. They had found 26-year-old Joshua Stimpson guilty of the murder of 23-year-old Molly Mclaren, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 26 years, and so of course prison is where he remains today. In the aftermath of Molly's murder, her family and friends decided that they wanted to create something in Molly's name, a legacy for her. As tragic and devastating as her death was, they wanted something positive to come out of it, and so they set up the Molly Mclaren Foundation, a charity which provides advice and support to those who are suffering from an eating disorder, just like Molly did. As we know, Molly felt so passionate about helping others overcome their eating disorders, and she would share her struggle with bulimia and anxiety notoriety through a blog and social media, and so it felt right for her family to try and continue that in her name. The Molly Mclaren Foundation did announce earlier this year that they had decided to start to wind down the charity. However, during its time, they were able to help so many individuals who were struggling with their mental health. They were even able to raise over £100,000, which is just incredible. The things that they achieved during their time are just amazing and such a beautiful legacy for Molly. But as well as the Molly Mclaren Foundation, Molly's loved ones also set up Molly Fest, a festival in her name because Molly loved music festivals. I think they've done a Molly Fest festival every year or most years since her death. All of her family and friends come together and they remember Molly and they just have fun in her memory, which is so lovely. You often hear of families doing the amazing thing of setting up a charity in their loved one's name, but I've never heard of a family setting up a festival in their name, so I just think that is so cool and such a amazing tribute to Molly. But yeah, that is it for this case. That is the case of Molly Mclaren. An absolutely devastating case. Whilst I was researching this one, it actually reminded me a lot of the Shana Grice case that I covered a couple of months ago, and the Jane Clough case actually. I mean, truthfully, I've covered a lot of cases that are similar, where a woman is killed because their partner or ex-partner can't handle being told no, can't handle being rejected. It's utterly horrific and so upsetting, but I'm going to continue sharing these kinds of stories because they are important to share. It's important to raise awareness of these topics, and these victims deserve to have their stories told. So yeah, that is it for this case. As always, please do let me know your thoughts and opinions on the case in the comments down below. I would love to hear what you guys think. Also, feel free to let me know of any other cases that you would like to see me cover on this channel. Again, you can let me know in the comments, or alternatively, I do have a case request form linked in the description box too. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next week for another mystery with Molly. Bye!